Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Hope your day is off to a good start. And we've got another rookie to take a look at here in this video. Today's the second day of Seahawks OTAs. By the way, if I hear interesting things, I will report on them later today. But for now, sink your teeth into some rookie evaluations. And today we are doing Cameron Young, nose tackle from Mississippi State. So this guy, the whole draft. The whole first 2 days, people were wondering, where's the defensive lineman? Where's the defensive lineman? Why aren't we getting defensive linemen? And it wasn't until this point right here with Cameron Young that we actually went and did something about it. Now, obviously, Cameron Young is not the level of prospect that I think a lot of people were hoping we would land for the defensive line, but he does address a fairly clear need. And I'll say this. Cameron Young may have been the one time in this draft, maybe not the one time, but it was the most clear and obvious time where it seemed like the Seahawks prioritized need over actual ability. And that's not to say anything too bad about Cameron Young, because there are definitely big boards out there that had him as a fourth round prospect. I know Rob Stanton actually thought that he should be like a third round prospect. There are some places that really liked him. So for him to go in the fourth round is not absurd or anything like that. It's not anything too bad. But I do wonder if need outranked actual ability and talent for this one selection. Kind of feels like it to me. But that's not to say the player is bad or the player isn't going to help us. In fact, I imagine not only is this guy going to help us, he's probably going to play a lot as a rookie because we need somebody like this and we don't really have a lot of options here. So when the season starts, he's going to be 23 years old. At the combine, he measured out at 6'3" and 3/8", which is 61st percentile, and 304 pounds, which is 47th percentile. However, we know, because we heard it from the Seahawks themselves, he's back up to about 320. And to my recollection, he's listed at 320 on College Football Reference. So it seems like he played at about 320, slimmed down for the combine, and now he's back up to his normal playing weight. So his actual weight is about 15 pounds more than this. 34.5-inch arms, very long arms, 88th percentile for players that play defensive tackle, and 10-inch hands, which is right about average, 54th percentile. So middling measurements except for the hands, the arms, which are really, really long. Combine, he only did one drill. It was the 40-yard dash, 5.140, which is 44th percentile. So if he slimmed down so we could run faster at the combine, it didn't work super well. Although, at the end of the day, if you're going to be playing nose tackle in the NFL, it's not going to be that often that your 40 time is going to matter. His 10-yard split was very slow, 1.8 seconds, 25th percentile. These are not really the drills that you need your nose tackle to be good at. We didn't get to see him do jumps. We didn't get to see him do the three-cone or anything like that, so we don't know about his athleticism so much, at least not in terms of testing scores. Excuse me. So, based off what we have here, it's a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of his objective measurements, but now let's talk about his stats, his numbers, his performance over the last 4 years for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. So, 2019, he didn't play that much. He played in 8 games, a total of 64 defensive snaps, had 5 tackles, 1 for loss, had 1 quarterback pressure, missed a tackle. Not really much we can learn here. His grades were passable. But Mississippi State, for whatever it's worth, gave up quite a bit on the ground, 152.5 rushing yards per game. 2020, he starts to play a little bit more. 8 games again, but this time he plays 145 snaps, 15 tackles, 2.5 for loss, 1 sack, a pass deflection, 5 QB pressures, and 1 missed tackle. So he's working his way up, but he's still very much a part-time player. And calling him even that is a little bit generous at this point. You can see there's about an even split between his pass rush snaps and his run defense snaps. He did drop into coverage once, which isn't that a sight to behold. 144 defensive line snaps, 1 as a box player, which that's kind of interesting, right? Don't know how that works most of the time, right? But maybe we'll find out if we keep going here. 83 snaps as the nose tackle, 61 as a defensive tackle. Yes, there is a little bit of a difference there. His scores from PFF are pretty good, actually. Really good tackling score, really nice run defense score, solid. And Mississippi State's run defense got much better. They only allowed 126 yards per game on the ground, 3.6 yards per carry. But he didn't really start having a big impact on the Mississippi State Bulldogs defense until the next year, 2021, when he played 12 games and gave 435 snaps. Fairly substantial amount of work this year, finally. And he actually started putting up bigger numbers. 53 tackles, 2.5 for loss, an interception of all things, 2 passes defensed, 16 QB pressures, and 8 missed tackles, which we don't love that, admittedly, but he's starting to actually make a consistent play-to-play impact on the team. And again, you can see that his snaps were basically even between run defense snaps and pass rush snaps, so he's getting a good amount of run doing both. Generally speaking, you would expect a team to have to deal with more running plays than passing plays, so you can see there's a little bit of an effort to let him be on the field mostly for the run plays. Did have a few coverage snaps as well, so hey, I mean, who are we to say it's wrong, right? Did have a couple of snaps as a box player, meaning more of a traditional linebacker. 240 snaps as a nose tackle, 191 as a defensive tackle, and 2 listed as over the tackle. Again, he scored out fairly well from PFF, nothing over the top. All those missed tackles kind of killed his tackling grade, admittedly, but everywhere else he was contributing in a relatively positive manner. And again, the Mississippi State run defense showed improvement in 2021. You can see 113 rushing yards allowed per game, 3.6 yards per carry again. So it seems like he is having some kind of an impact on this defense. It's not always felt through stats, but you can see where things are getting better, in part because of his presence on the team. And then we come to our most recent season, which was, of course, the most he played. 13 games, almost 600 snaps, so he got a lot of run this year, averaging, I mean, that's almost 50 snaps a game, just shy of 50 snaps a game. 37 tackles, so his actual statistics went down, but as we all know, I think nose tackles are not often measured by their statistical input. It's a little more complicated than that. It's what kind of impact are you having on your defense, particularly your run defense. So let's take a look at that. 3 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 1 pass defensed, 18 QB pressures. So over these last 2 years, he wasn't, I mean, he's no Will Anderson, but he's getting a little bit of pressure on the quarterback. It's nothing crazy, but it exists. It's present. And he improved his tackling dramatically. Only 3 missed tackles compared to 8 the year before. Big improvement. Big step in the right direction. Played way more snaps against the pass this year. That's one thing that's worth noting here. So he became more of like an every down player. And I don't think he'll be an every down player in the NFL, but you can see him start to become a more consistent part of the defensive rotation. Again, almost all of his snaps are played on the defensive line. About half of his a little less than half of his snaps are as a nose tackle, and the rest are as a defensive tackle. And then he plays a couple of snaps lined up over the tackle. So you start to see it all come together for him this season as an all-around player. His grades did dip a little bit, so you do see, and I saw this in in a couple of the games that I looked at here, he's starting to lose effectiveness the more he plays. And that kind of makes sense, right? That's just kind of common sense, right? The more you play, if you're playing as a nose tackle and you're, in the trenches taking on all those blockers, all that attention, throwing yourself into a traffic jam every snap for almost 50 snaps a game, it kind of makes sense that you would lose effectiveness as the game goes on and you would be less effective on a per snap basis over the course of the season. Run defense was still good though. Tackling was fine. Pass rush dipped a little bit. His effectiveness as a rusher dipped, which that's not what he's here to do anyway, so I'm not really that concerned about that. But it was better the previous year. Ooh, excuse me. Ooh. The Mississippi State run defense did regress a little bit this year. Not critically so. It was still less than 4 yards a carry, but 134 rushing yards allowed per game. So if you take a look at his totals, over almost 1,250 snaps as a defensive player. There were some, of course, assorted special teams snaps as well. In 41 games, 110 tackles, 9 for a loss. He's not a big stat guy. I will say that 40 pressures in 41 career games, not bad for a nose tackle, but I would imagine that effectiveness is going to dip even further when he actually gets to the NFL. I think one of the statistical things you can call out with him, his tackling did get better from year 3 to year 4, when he went from 8 missed tackles in 435 snaps to 3 in 598 snaps. So, that is a basic rundown of the numbers of Cameron Young. Good player, decent amount of experience, not a crazy amount of experience, but these last 2 years he's shown that he looks like he's going to belong in the NFL, and you kind of get an idea of the fact that I think he's going to be a good fit. But, again, as I always say, the real question is, what is he going to do for us? This does a good job of summarizing what he did for his team over in Mississippi State. But what is he actually going to do for the Seattle Seahawks now that he's here? And that's going to be covered in my next video. Later today, we're going to talk about Cameron Young, the player.